He did not cry for help, he did not fight, he simply endured, until compassion arrived just in time to rewrite what pain had nearly finished. Some suffering never announces itself. It does not cry out. It does not demand attention. It simply exists quietly, relentlessly, waiting for someone to notice what others pass by. When Animal Aid Unlimited received the emergency call, there was no dramatic description, no sense of urgency in the words themselves. Just concern. Just uncertainty. No one knew how close death already was. What the rescue team found was a dog whose body had become a place of constant conflict. His face, once ordinary and unremarkable, had turned into a battlefield. Deep wounds had been hollowed into his skin, not fresh, not sudden but slow, patient damage. Maggots had taken hold, feeding on what pain had already claimed, consuming him inch by inch. One eye was swollen shut. Not in sleep, but in defense, sealed by suffering rather than rest. He scratched at his face again and again. Not out of instinct. Not confusion. But desperation. Each movement was an attempt to escape a body that no longer felt like his own. A body that had become a prison. There was no panic in him. No fight left. Only endurance. At some point, time stops being measured in hours. It becomes measured in breaths. The rescuers moved quickly, not because death was imminent in the usual sense, but because in this case, death would not come gently. Delay would not bring peace. It would bring prolonged agony. Here, death was not merciful. Intervention had to be. Hands reached out, not to restrain, not to dominate, but to heal. One by one, the maggots were removed. The wounds were cleaned. And as the damage was revealed in its full, heartbreaking truth, something unexpected happened. The dog did not resist. He trembled. His body shook beneath the touch. But he stayed still, as though some fragile instinct, buried deep beneath pain, recognized that these hands were different. For the first time in a long while, pain was not being ignored. It was being challenged. Sedated and treated, he was carried to safety. The chaos faded. The noise fell away. And silence took its place. In the days that followed, he lay still. Not asleep. Not fully awake. Hovering in that uncertain space where survival has not yet made its decision. When his eye finally opened, it did so cautiously. There was no joy in it. No relief. Only disbelief. The world had hurt him before deeply enough that trust, once broken, could not simply return. Healing does not announce itself loudly either. It has its own quiet language. The wounds began to close. The swelling softened. The scratching stopped, not because he lacked strength, but because the pain was finally loosening its grip. With each passing day, his body remembered something it had nearly forgotten: how to exist without agony. And then, one morning, he stood. Unsteady. Hesitant. Alive. His tail lifted, not confidently, not fully, but just enough to suggest possibility. The eyes that had once dulled under constant suffering now held a fragile light. He was no longer a creature waiting to die. He was a soul learning how to live again. This is not a story about luck. It is a story about intervention. About compassion arriving before it is too late. About what happens when someone chooses not to look away. Because every life saved is a quiet rebellion against cruelty. And for this dog nearly lost to unimaginable pain, kindness rewrote the ending. This time, he did not have to suffer alone. Healing does not end when wounds close. Sometimes, that is only where it begins. Because the body remembers pain long after the pain itself has faded. There are moments when he still startles, when sudden sounds freeze him in place, when instinct quietly warns that danger might return. And yet, with each passing day, fear loosens its grip just a little more. He begins to learn that hands can bring comfort, that voices can be gentle, that rest no longer means vulnerability. Trust does not return all at once. It arrives quietly, in patience, in presence, in moments where nothing bad happens at all. What saved him was not only medicine or skill, but the decision to care when it would have been easier to look away. Compassion did not arrive loudly. It came without promise, without expectation, simply choosing not to leave suffering unseen. And perhaps that is the quiet truth this story leaves behind. Suffering does not always ask to be seen. But when someone chooses to look closer, everything can change. For him, someone did. And that made all the difference.